On this edition for Sunday, March 27th, the latest on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In our signature segment, Fighting Fire with Fire, and showcasing public art at the airport. Next on PBS NewsHour Weekend.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wackenheim III, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, the Anderson Family Fund, the estate of Worthington Mayo Smith, Leonard and Norma Chlorfine, the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, Koo and Patricia Ewan, committed to bridging cultural differences in our communities, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg. We try to live in the moment to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments.
For 25 years, Consumer Cellular has been offering no-contract wireless plans designed to help people do more of what they like. Our U.S.-based customer service team can help find a plan that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
Additional support has been provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The war Russia launched more than 1 month ago is grinding on, but Ukrainian forces are holding huge territory, pushing Russian troops back in places, and the capital city of Kyiv is still in Ukrainian hands. Despite that, the humanitarian crisis is growing and refugees are fleeing from frontline cities. This morning, a ferry crossing from the Ukrainian port city of Odessa to neighboring Romania brought largely women and children to safety. The arrivals also told stories of a city badly in need of humanitarian aid.
It's very difficult because we don't have food enough, we don't have medicine.
In the western Ukrainian city of Lviv, near the border with Poland, firefighters worked to contain a blaze at an oil production facility following a Russian rocket attack yesterday. Residents in the outskirts of Kyiv conducted to sift through the remains of homes damaged by Russian shelling. Not long after President Joe Biden's speech in Warsaw, Poland yesterday evening, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered his daily video address. He voiced frustration with Western nations for what he called, quote, ping-pong discussions surrounding delivery of fighter planes and other weapons to Ukraine.
Ukraine can't shoot down Russian missiles with shotguns, machine guns, of which there are too many in the supplies. It's impossible to unblock Mariupol without a sufficient number of tanks, other armored vehicles, and especially without jets.
In Israel today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken tried to clarify yesterday's remarks by President Biden about Russia's president. At a news conference, Blinken stressed that Mr. Biden was not calling for a change to Russia's government when he said, referring to Russian President Vladimir Putin, quote, for God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
As you know, and as you've heard us say repeatedly, we do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that matter. In this case, as in any case, it's up to the people of the country in question. It's up to the Russian people.
Blinken is attending a summit of 4 Arab nations and Israel being held today and tomorrow. The unusual gathering includes foreign ministers from Bahrain, Morocco, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt, along with the U.S. and Israel. The discussions will reportedly focus on Iran and a possible deal on its nuclear capabilities, but the war in Ukraine is also a top agenda item. A top European Union diplomat was in Tehran today for talks with Iran's nuclear negotiators. State media gave few details, except that the discussions were about renewing the 2015 nuclear agreement. Chinese search teams located a second black box today at the site of a Boeing 737-800 plane crash where 132 people died last week. Officials say the flight data recorder will be analyzed along with the previously located cockpit voice recorder. The cause of the China Eastern Airlines crash in a mountainous region in southern China is still under investigation. Today, search crews, family members, and government officials held a ceremony mourning the 123 passengers and 9 crew members who died last Wednesday. For more national and international news, visit pbs.org/newshour. The war in Ukraine is now entering its second month with no foreseeable end in sight. I recently spoke with Kimberly Martin, professor of political science at Barnard College, Columbia University, about the current invasion and what can be gleaned from Russia's past aggressions. Kimberly, are there some things maybe that we can learn from the past? Let's start looking first at Chechnya and what happened there.
Well, in some sense, he's using some similar techniques in terms of targeting civilians. What's really interesting is that Putin doesn't seem to have learned that targeting civilians doesn't work when you have a strong sense of nationalism. So that was certainly true in Afghanistan, right? It sort of caused people to really hate the invader. And what really makes that surprising is that his own family went through the siege of Leningrad back in the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union. And so you would have thought that he would not have tried siege tactics himself in Ukraine, but we see that that's what he's doing.
What is the core difference between what happened in Crimea? I mean, in a way, it almost seems like he expected that to be what happened with Ukraine.
So Crimea was almost bloodless. There were a few people who were killed, but basically it was done sneakily by a small group of people. Russia did not admit to having done it at the time. At the time, they said, oh, it was just people defending their neighborhoods, and they bought their army uniforms in surplus shops. And then a couple of years later, Putin admitted that it was actually agents that came from the Russian military intelligence service. But it was a very different kind of operation than a full-scale, full-blown, with hundreds of thousands of troops, military invasion.
In Russia right now, there are still millions of people who stand with Putin, but there are, at least we are seeing indications of people on the streets protesting and saying, we're not for this war.
I think part of the reason is that there are long connections between the Russian people and the Ukrainian people. And so there's a sense of these are not our enemy. These are our brethren. What in the world are we doing here? There are family connections between the two. And the other thing is that there are Russian troops that are dying in the field. And we don't have exact numbers, but we think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 troops that have died in the last month. And, that's not going to affect every family, but it's going to affect a certain number of families, especially since many of those troops are conscripts. We're seeing a full-scale war that's involving lots of Russian troops that are being killed and are being wounded. And so it's very different from what he's done before, except in Chechnya. I mean, it's similar to what he did in Chechnya.
On the one hand, he has managed to unite an enormous portion, the majority of the world, against him. Yet India and China, who are not on board with what he's doing per se, but they're not standing strongly against him. And those are two very important countries with significant resources, not that they might send troops and tanks to him, but that they might not ice him out.
What I would recommend that we do is, rather than paying attention to what these countries say and the rhetoric that they use, to pay attention to the actions that they take. And it will surprise me a lot if China goes against the sanctions regime, because we know in 2014 they did not. Chinese state-owned corporations and Chinese state-owned banks rely so much on the Western market and on banks that have an influence coming from the US banking system that they did not violate those sanctions. So it will be a real surprise if even countries that do not say that they are observing the sanctions go against them because of the possibility of secondary sanctions and the strength of the US banking system.
At the current pace, where do you see this going in a few weeks or a few months?
Unfortunately, where I think most experts see it heading is a stalemate, a very hurting stalemate. I don't think Putin can stand to lose. And so I don't think he can give up without having something that he can call a win. And at this point, I don't think it's clear what any kind of a negotiated settlement would look like that would be politically possible for both sides to agree to. So unfortunately, it looks like a really bad situation going ahead for the foreseeable future.
Kimberly Martin, professor of political science at Barnard College and Columbia University. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Hari.
Fire is often part of a forest's ecological balance, but climate change is upsetting that. In the American West, decades of suppressing fires has led to overgrown forests and record years of wildfires. One tool to both reduce the risk from large out-of-control fires while also restoring the forest's ecological health is the practice of setting controlled fires. NewsHour Weekend's Christopher Booker reports from Northern California on efforts to get more so-called good fire on the ground. This segment is part of our ongoing series, Peril and Promise, the Challenge of Climate Change.
With help from some of his neighbors and a volunteer squad of strangers last month, Rick Batha set his yard on fire.
Fire module number 2, test fire.
Using a drip torch, a canister filled with diesel that drops fire onto the ground, Batha methodically left a line of fire in his wake. After making sure it doesn't get too high or burn too hot, the team of volunteers joins in. Some burning new lines, leading the fire down the hill from where it started, and others assigned to watch and rake dry debris away from larger trees. The process took about 4 hours, burning just under 4 acres of underbrush on Batha's Northern California property in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
So, what the hell did you do to your yard?
Yeah, really. We wiped out. We did an underburn.
This was the first time Batha had done what's called a prescribed burn on his 24-acre property. He said his decision was guided by a desire to make his land more resilient to wildfires in the future.
I didn't really have this in my vision. This came along because of all the fires that have been around here, and it's feeling deadly serious to folks with land around here.
The edge of the Dixie Fire, which burned nearly 1 million acres last year, was just north of Batha's property. Over more than 3 months, it blazed across 5 California counties, becoming the single largest wildfire in state history. In August, it ripped through the town of Greenville, destroying nearly 75% of its structures. Today, there's not much left of downtown. Houses have been leveled, and commercial buildings have been reduced to rubble.
The fire kind of spread along the bottom of the hill, along the highway, and then came up around this way.
Jeff Grief's property is less than 2 miles from the center of Greenville. The assembly of dead trees marching up the hill towards his house tell a tale of a near miss, made possible after years of preparation. His cabin and most of the trees around it were spared, a green oasis amidst the burned land.
I had thinned everything that we see around here on both sides of the road. On this side, we had done a fair amount of underburn, not all of it, but on the other side here, that had all been underburnt.
A few months before the Dixie Fire, Grief did a prescribed burn on about 5 acres of his property as part of the Plumas Underburn Cooperative, or PUC. It's a local group that sprung up in early 2019 to help make prescribed burning more accessible to property owners.
Do you think had you not put in all that effort that your house would have survived?
Definitely not. Even though I built the house with fire-resistive materials, it would have just been so hot, and so just the momentum and intensity of the heat rolling through here, just as it did over there, where it's all black, it would have been enough to destroy the house.
When you came back, there was something waiting for you on your door.
Yes, the section chief for CAL FIRE had been here, and he left his card. On the back of his card, he wrote, "All your hard work paid off," which was very gratifying.
Like the prescribed fire that helped save Grief's property, the burn at Rick Batha's was also done as part of the local Prescribed Burn Association, PUC. Community efforts like this one are just a small part of a larger change in thinking around wildfire protection.
I refer to it as a movement. You know, there's almost like an uprising around prescribed fire that's happening in California right now, and we're shaking things up, and communities are tired of waiting around for someone else to solve the problem for them.
Lania Quinn Davidson is a fire advisor at the University of California Cooperative Extension in Humboldt County. She's helped spread the concept of community prescribed burn associations like PUC around the state. She says the nearly century-old emphasis on suppressing fires has left California and other western U.S. states vulnerable, leaving forests overgrown with massive amounts of fuel that can burn in a wildfire.
For a long time, our primary focus around fire has been to put them out, and we thought that that would protect our forests and communities. And so now we've seen that that was a big mistake. And we are in the process of really trying to shift that attitude and that culture. And I think a lot of the people who work in fire management in general recognize that need. But it's not an easy thing. I mean, this is deeply ingrained.
But Quinn Davidson says there has been progress at the state level. Last fall, Governor Gavin Newsom signed laws designed to reduce the legal liability for burners, as long as they aren't being grossly negligent.
Woo!
The legislation also acknowledged that purposely setting fire is not a new practice. For centuries, indigenous communities have used fire as a tool. Under the new law, there's also reduced liability for cultural burns, fires set by indigenous community members to meet specific cultural goals, like increasing biodiversity, ceremonial reasons, or to target a plant with cultural value.
You know, it's taken years to get to that point. And it's a no-brainer, really, when you think about it, like, this is what works. We know that this is what works.
Don Hankins is a pyrogeographer at Chico State University in California, studying the intersection of fire, geography, and ecology. He's also Plains Miwok, one of the indigenous groups that inhabited what is now California. In late January, he did a cultural burn on part of his own property outside Chico. While different tribes burn for different reasons, he says he's taking a systemic approach to boost the health of his forest.
For prescribed burning, it's not as nuanced. There's a lot more to cultural burning. I like to think about it as like layers of an onion, like there's a lot to peel back around it. And so, I'm not only setting fire to benefit the things that I want in terms of fuel reduction and, berry production and different things like that, but also recognizing that birds and other wildlife, insects, whatever, are going to benefit from that fire too.
As we walked, Hankins described how the timing and location of where to burn requires a careful reading of the landscape.
And this little tiny plant that's coming up is this one leaf right now is an orchid that's coming up.
Just 2 weeks after it was burned?
2 weeks after it was burned, it prefers, from what I see, to be in the places where I burn pretty frequently. I also know once it comes up and the leaf is out that I don't want to burn when that plant is coming up because it's at a state now where it would be sensitive to fire.
Hankins cautions that balance is necessary when it comes to putting fire on the land.
As we're starting to amp up, the amount of prescribed burning that's taking place in the state now, what concerns me is that, we could go out and set fires and we can get this acreage amount, but is that going to get us the ecological side that we want? Is that going to get us the cultural side that we want?
But even as controlled burning ramps up around the state, the scale of what's needed is immense. That was clear on a densely wooded ridge in coastal Marin County, north of San Francisco.
This is like charring, but you can see it's cooling off as soon as it gets through that outer layer.
Sasha Berlman is a woodland scientist and director of a nonprofit program called Fire Forward, which trains community members how to safely and effectively perform prescribed burns.
Yeah, I think you can get in right here and spray it. I would take a nice clean breath before walking in.
On this day, Berlman was leading a burn of undergrowth in a redwood forest that hasn't burned in over 70 years. With so much flammable debris on the ground, it was slow going, with the crew of mostly volunteers carefully working around the redwoods.
This is the boutiquiest of burns right now. I'm loving it.
All in, the team burned about 1/3 of an acre.
This is tiny. And I like to say every acre counts, and we have been hitting a lot of small acres of these really difficult fuel types that need a lot of attention to get restoration. But we need millions of acres.
While the U.S. Forest Service and CAL FIRE have committed to burning or thinning 1 million acres annually by 2025, they are not currently burning anywhere close to that target, reaching about 1/10 of that goal in 2019. Berlman believes that community-led fire initiatives can fill some of that void.
We have people who own relatively small tracts of land that do include some wildland. We can make a huge cultural shift in short time versus massive hundreds of thousands of acres held by one agency that, can't probably keep up with the need for prescribed fire across that whole piece of ground.
California must need an army of people, though, given the size and scale of these fires.
Yeah, we've spent billions of dollars creating an army of people to put fires out. I believe that we need to do at least as much on the culture of stewardship and culture of good fire side. But to me, that's a cultural change, right? Rather than creating an army, we are building into our very being in California this ethos that to live here means to understand the landscape more deeply and to put good fire on the ground as part of the responsibility of being in this place.
When you think of public art, you might think of a mural at the local library, a sculpture in a park or in a plaza downtown. But what about at the airport? NewsHour Weekend special correspondent Carla Murthy traveled to Houston, Texas to get a tour of the city's extensive public art collection, one of the largest collections in the state.
When travelers arrive at the main terminal of Hobby Airport in Houston, Texas, they're greeted by a work of art.
This is one of my favorite pieces, this really beautiful multi-panel mural. It's by local artist Libby Masterson. Libby comes from a family of jewelry makers, so you can see there's a lot of jewel tone qualities going on here. But she's also a great traveler and loves to travel. So this is her view out the window of the airplanes. Passengers really love this piece, as do I. It really makes me want to get on a plane and go somewhere.
This mural is one of nearly 350 artworks owned by the city's airport system.
We've got video, textile art, paintings, drawings, sculpture, photography, a little bit of everything, and it really...
Alton Delaney is a curator for Houston's 3 airports, which include Bush Intercontinental and Ellington Field.
For many of our passengers, they're connecting passengers, so they never actually leave the airport doors. So it is their one chance to see the great art community that is Houston, Texas.
Delaney takes me to what he calls the West Concourse Gallery.
Before we started displaying art in this was really just a dark hall. People were just passing through, not spending any time here at all. And now it's something really beautiful. We have about 20 works of art here, mostly from Houston or Texas-based artists. And the quality of artwork here would rival any gallery in town. I love that there's a moving sidewalk. It's kind of like a drive-by gallery, right? You could just stand here and enjoy the art as you roll by.
Since Delaney began as curator 3 years ago, he's doubled the collection at Hobby Airport, which is funded by a city ordinance that earmarks 1.75% of eligible construction project budgets towards acquiring public art and commissioning new work from artists like Cruz Ortiz.
And behind me is going to be a really large painting, so I'm really excited.
Ortiz is one of 10 Texas-based artists selected this year to create work for the city's airports, a $1.7 million investment. Ortiz's previous work has been exhibited at the Louvre in Paris, the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., and soon at Gate 1.
This little group is going to Puerto Vallarta right now. This is a community of people. And for me, that's what public art is all about. It's the process of being among people, being in a community. So these are drawings.
Ortiz brought along some sketches he made documenting the Texas landscape. He says these drawings are the inspiration for his painting, which will pay tribute to the land and the native people of the area.
And honestly, this big painting, it's literally just, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of who we are and how we interact with this land.
So we're very proud of the collection. When I tell people we have over 350 pieces of art, they're like, no way. I'm like, yes way.
Liliana Rambo is the Chief Terminal Management Officer for the Houston Airport System. She says all that art doesn't just benefit the passengers.
In 2019, we had over 56 million passengers that came to these airports. So for an artist, that's give or take in an annual basis over 50 million people that get to take a look at that piece of art. So it brings a lot of value to that artist as well.
Conceptual artist Alicia Eggert is installing her own work, which has been exhibited nationally and internationally, from the Smithsonian to Beijing and Milan. She primarily uses text to address concepts of time. This piece is called "This Present Moment Used to Be the Unimaginable Future."
So I think people in the airport can experience it in different ways. It can be a really personal sort of reflection on the current present moment, where they are at that really specific point in time, or it could encourage them to reflect on like bigger things that are happening out in the world right now. I never really thought about my work being in an airport, but I love that it is. We spend so much time in airports, and it can make that time a lot more meaningful.
Finally tonight, a bit of news about us. Next weekend, you're likely to see some changes. The NewsHour Weekend program heads to D.C. and will be anchored by Jeff Bennett. Since 2013, this program has been produced by WNET, the public television station in New York. And now it's heading to WETA in D.C., where the weekday program is produced. In all that time, we've brought you the news that didn't stop happening over the weekend. We've covered conflicts and climate change, poverty and politics, and the economy and the arts, and much more, with the same editorial integrity the NewsHour has stood for over the decades. My colleagues and I are proud to have had the opportunity to carry this torch, and we wish Jeff and all the NewsHour staffers in D.C. the best as they begin this new chapter. That's all for this edition of PBS NewsHour Weekend from New York. I'm Hari Srinivasan. From all of us at WNET, thanks for watching. Stay healthy and have a good night.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, the Anderson Family Fund, the estate of Worthington Mayo Smith, Leonard and Norma Clorfine, the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, Koo and Patricia Ewan, committed to bridging cultural differences in our communities, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg. We try to live in the moment, to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments. Additional support has been provided by Consumer Cellular and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.